This is a topic that, despite happening thousands of years ago and existing in movies decades ago, is still relevant. It's evergreen. Some might even say it's still juicy. But only this episode will be able to decide whether or not those Stephen Sommers movies were on the right side of history or on the wrong side of the river, like Benny and the Horses.
I am not gonna engage with that.
This is It Belongs in a Museum. I'm still Andy.
I'm still Mark.
And today we've got a little 1-2 punch. I've got a little Anaxuna Moon intro for you, and then he's going to take it away with the Imhotep history. We're going to be talking about the real people that inspired the characters in the Mummy movies. So I'll hit you with Anaxuna Moon lore, and then I'll turn it over to Mark for the rest of it. So you would know Anaxuna Moon's character from the 2001, I believe, Mummy Returns. She's technically in the first one, but only kind of as like a mild corpsey thing.
Yeah.
She's not fleshed out until the second one. Hey, yeah. High five. So, Anaxuna Moon is based on a real historical figure loosely, and I'm going to struggle with these names because there are a ton of syllables. And in the movies, they hyphenate. In real life, it appears that they did not.
Oh, in original like papyrus texts and stuff, like once they stopped using hieroglyphics, not only were there not spaces between words, but there were no vowels.
So this is her name was Ankhesenamun. I'll have the text up so
Good
you
old
can look.
Anki.
Or before she was married, it looks like her name was Ankhesenpaten. She lived in the 14th century BCE in Egypt's 18th dynasty. Her father was Pharaoh Ankhenaten, and Queen Nefertiti. Her husband was Tutankhamun, who was also her brother. So in real life, she didn't live in the 13th century when she was presented in the Mummy movie. She lived in the 14th century. She didn't seem to have schemed or betrayed anyone, and also didn't die committing suicide while battling a bunch of guards. She, after her husband died, likely married her grandfather. So after her brother husband died, she might have married her grandfather. She lived over 1,000 years apart from Imhotep in real life, who lived in the 27th century BCE. And her brother husband likely died due to inbred issues and remains of malaria parasites that were found in his remains by modern scientists. Along with a broken leg, a club foot, and multiple skeletal deformities from inbreeding. So that's an element that the Stargate movies never really adapted.
That was
Tutankhamun. Yeah. So that's a name people know. I feel like you go to a museum, you do hear that a lot. So she lived 1,000 years apart from the real Imhotep. Yeah. But I intentionally didn't read any of the Imhotep history.
I get it.
So that's your Anaxuna Moon introduction, and now we move over to Imhotep, the Scarab King himself, as the movies would have you believe.
Yeah, so what do you think Imhotep is known for?
Well, historically or pop culture?
Historically.
I think he was known for being involved in, I think he has something to do with the creation of the pyramids, or was an architect of some kind. I believe that he was just kind of known for being, I don't think he was a head honcho of anything. I think he was just a smart person involved in certain regimes, and that he would probably be best known for the things that he made, probably surviving throughout time, or maybe they found more stuff out after he died. But I've intentionally not researched him and tried to scrub any memories I had from history classes as a child from my mind, because I didn't want to step on your half of this.
So here's the issue that comes into talking about this stuff, because anything I credit to him, because he did build pyramids, which pyramids he built is up to debate.
He should have signed them.
Well, also there was a thing that whenever you took over, when a new pharaoh came to power, it was customary that anything the previous pharaohs had built, you scrubbed their names from the history book and said, "No, I built that."
Yeah.
And basically everyone had to be like, "Wow, one day in, and you already built all this stuff that I work at. Got it."
Mm. We're kind
So
of regressing to that as a society now.
yeah, so it's becoming that was an issue that historians dealt with, and what we only know about Imhotep from two pieces of like contemporary evidence.
Hmm.
Uh,
So even less than the Black Samurai.
yes. Uh, Granted, you have to imagine, like ancient Greece thought like Egypt and like all these things, they were ancient to
Yeah.
them. They were super old.
Yeah, when I was looking at the dates of when, because I was comparing the dates of Imhotep to Anck-su-namun, I was like, wow, not only did they live so far apart that there's no chance they ever met, even accidentally, but they lived so long ago that it kind of breaks my brain a little bit.
Yeah, it's abstract. It's like when people talk about like how far the moon is, where it's like oh no, it would take you like 3 days going this speed to get there, or like how far the galaxy is.
Yeah,
Where
there's
it's
just
just
some scales that are hard for us to
yeah.
comprehend.
So ancient. So we know about him. He is credited with building the pyramid of Djoser, Djoser,
Yeah, I guess it would be Joser.
at
Joser.
Saqqara. Uh, that is accepted that Imhotep built that.
Okay. We
And
should probably preface this that you don't speak any of the languages in or around Egypt, so you're probably going to get names pronounced wrong.
yeah,
I'll put
I will
the
say
spelling of things
I
up for
did.
people.
Yeah, Imhotep has an H in his name,
Yeah,
which in my notes I kept forgetting to write down.
that's fine. I write things phonetically
Uh,
sometimes.
but yeah, I did as much research as I could with experts in the field, like
Yeah.
talking with like watching it, like like reading college papers and going to scholarly articles to try and figure out
Yeah, some
what
people may think that maybe we like watch YouTube videos or like we just look at like a BuzzFeed
or
article.
Wikipedia.
Yeah, no, we don't do that. We basically our rule of thumb is if we couldn't turn it in as a college paper,
Well,
then we don't get to do it
yeah,
as an episode.
that and there was a different podcast that I watched, and they're like, "Oh, we went back to the ancient Japanese like papyrus scripts and found a translation of it online." And I was reading that for the research on this episode, and I refuse to be outdone by those
I
guys.
mean, you've translated like Dutch manuscripts.
It was a Dutch article, but yes, but like
Yeah, but yeah, so like we do put in work, like we actually do try.
yeah,
This isn't we're not necessarily doing this because we're like we're going to become so viral.
no,
It's more like we really love science and history and we would like this to be something where people who are writing a college paper could use our stuff as a springboard to find their sources
yeah,
and go out and write their paper or do a presentation.
yeah. So
Use
pyramid.
my powers, I beg you.
So the tomb uh of Djoser,
Mhm.
or DJ Ozer, as I like
I
to call him. It's a statue base, the statue base of Jerkhet
yeah,
slash
Nedricket.
Djoser
Nedricket.
slash Djoser, same guy, maybe, slash Imhotep, maybe. Either they knew each other, or they were the same person, or they were brothers, or they were cousins, or they just worked with each other.
That's so in history, not only does heat and time erode a lot of historical documentation, but when you're seeing a language change from hieroglyphics to papyrus and stuff like
and
that,
also,
and with, like you said, people scrubbing away the history of their predecessors, it is so hard for historians to nail down
yeah,
specifics.
also, it could be like, oh, Imhotep is his brother, Imhotep is his father. Both could be true.
That's true.
That
That's, yeah, fair point.
So we know about that statue, which is in Cairo,
Hmm.
and it lists him. We also have a dipinto, which is not a carving in a wall on a wall, but it's a painting
Oh, that's
on
nice.
a wall. With it's on the enclosure wall of Sekhmet,
Okay.
where it lists him as a god.
Oh, good for him.
Seal bearer of the king of Lower Egypt, Imhotep, is what it translates to.
Cool, cool.
So we know he built at least one tomb, which you can still go to, and it's like it's built into a mountain, and it's the size of a mall.
That's rad.
Yeah, you can
Well,
go.
I mean, he probably had slaves build it, but he probably designed it.
Well, yeah, he was the one who like making sure specifications were kept, and considering how your tomb wasn't meant to glorify you as much as it was meant to talk how cool you were to the gods when you died.
Mm.
And the mummification process was like, hey, you're going to need a body if the gods bring you back. So let's take out all the bits that rot, your brain, your stomach, lungs. But let's leave the heart because Anubis needs to weigh that on scales.
Fair enough.
So that was left. But the organ stuff were put in jars denoted to each of the gods.
Yeah, I've seen the mummy movies.
Well, yeah. It's something I noticed because in Dungeons and Dragons, the only way to permanently kill mummies, you have to destroy the heart, which is kept in a jar. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's inaccurate. That's the one thing they didn't put in jars.
Which is a callback to our D&D episode.
Yeah.
Which was a bear to edit.
Yeah.
Because I had to keep asking you, is this the person? Is this the edition?
Yes. And I had to dig through my notes and stuff, and
I did my best.
I'm happy with how that video came out. Watch it and subscribe.
I had someone actually me on the Fallout episode because I misspoke when I meant to say Pip Boy and I said a Vault Boy because we were just riffing on it because we're like let's just do an intro so people know what's going on. And so he's like, oh, so you're a fake fan? It's like, do you think that like I need you to believe that I like Fallout to bring you historical information? I'm just a fan.
I will say that I'm probably more of the Fallout guy out of the two of us, but
Fallout 4, yes, 100%.
Yes.
But I've played Fallout New Vegas, I think, way more than you.
Yeah.
And Fallout 3, because I think Fallout 3 was the first one I played consistently. I'll admit, I haven't played the point and clicks because that's it's before my time. Just as an aside, I think it's funny that people are like, I bet you recorded this historical documentation as a fake fan. It's like, dude, I literally did this. I've liked Walton Goggins since Justified and G.I. Joe, another Stephen Sommers movie.
Yeah, which is the same universe as The Mummy. Speaking of mummies, Imhotep was listed whenever he died. He was listed amongst a list of gods because I think the idea was, oh, you were such a good person, you became a god.
Yeah.
And that was kind of things like you were the tomb was meant to show how good of a person you were to the gods, so the gods would be like, dude, this guy's a real one. In the afterlife, he needs a whole bunch of power. In this second, it's basically like you die and wake up in the Matrix. How powerful do you want to be in the Matrix?
So it really is like the end game state from Stargate, where it's like, oh, you have to ascend to this plane and this and that. I'm not going to go too far down the rabbit hole, but you should watch the Stargate show. That's why
pyramids and these giant statues and stuff were being made by powerful people. So they're like, I have the resources to build this stuff, and I want to make sure in the next life.
So from like day one, they were always like, I'm going to die, and that's when the real party starts. So you guys better build some crazy stuff for me.
Yeah.
I have a club foot and a sister wife, and I'm going to party in the afterlife because you're going to build me some stuff.
Yeah. And so it was sometimes assumed that they would become gods or be fused with gods or something like that. Like, it's a weird...
Egyptian mythology is bizarre.
So, we know on that he was at least somewhat perceived to be a god, because whenever you were buried on the wall or on the tomb or on the thing you were actually buried in, they would put in the names of like all the gods who were like, yo, shout out to all my boys, because it was like an award ceremony where it's like, I want to give a shout out to Osiris.
They were his patrons.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, special thank you to our Patreon. So on there it lists...
Thanks, Horus.
Sokar Osiris.
Uh-huh.
Imhotep the Great, son of Ptah. And so he's listed amongst the gods. Which is interesting that they were like... And this guy who said it was the son of Ramses II named...
Show me. Oh, Kamwaset is the way it looks like you wrote it down.
Yeah. So he was at the very least perceived as god, and he did have a cult. A cult that only grew in power the longer he was dead.
So, okay, so the Mummy movies didn't make up him having a cult. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That was the one thing I assumed they did make up.
But when the Greco-Roman Empire stuff came in and they had their own pantheon, they just absorbed him as one of the gods.
Really?
Yeah,
That's kind of nuts.
yeah. Apparently, there were statues of Imhotep that like were portable, like they're about the size of
Like
a
a Funko Pop. He had Funko Pops.
effectively, but it's him sitting in a chair with normal proportions,
Yeah,
and
like
it was
like Black Adam. Black Adam Funko Pop Imhotep. Boom. That's a sentence I've just said. What the
uh.
hell?
So yeah, he became associated with the Roman god Asclepius, which is the Roman god of medicine.
Oh, I was gonna say if you don't get enough sleep, you'll wake up feeling asclepius.
And also
Real
kind of,
nothing for that?
I'm not addressing that. My brain is in ancient Egypt right now.
Is it in a jar so it won't rot? That's how you avoid brain rot.
I mean, solid idea, but also they would put the mummy body in a bunch of salt and
Did they
check
really
on
go
it.
through the nose?
It was different method. It was a trade secret for each group people,
Uh,
and so the better, like, oh, I saw the work you did on the last guy. Great mummification, by the way. I was hoping, could I maybe hire you for the thing I'm doing?
so it's like cake boss of mummification.
Yes.
Good God.
And but your death was basically treated like an award ceremony of like, I want to thank all the gods. Ra, good job on bringing the sun into the sky.
We'd
Don't
like
know
to
where it goes when it's not there. Probably underground.
we'd like to thank Manscaped for my empire and the slaves.
It was brought to you by Squanch,
Squatching the soap shit.
the Rick and Morty looking soap.
Ugh, I hate that stuff.
Yeah.
Their
Uh,
ads are so juvenile,
yeah.
and that's coming from me.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we get into the issue as far as history with Emotep is that the man, a lot of his stuff, like we have two contemporary pieces noting him as a
Evidence.
person,
Yeah.
but we have a lot of evidence of him as a god.
Well, I guess the facts have it. He was a god. All right, so this
But
has been a great episode.
No. And that kind of where we get into the issue of it was Nefertiti's tomb
Mm-hmm.
that was uncovered, and that kind of triggered a whole bunch of people were like, dude, this guy was digging around in the desert because he liked digging around in the desert and he was a good sketch artist.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, whoa, I found a stair. Let's dig up the stair. And there's another stair. They dug that up. And it was eventually an entire tomb that was like layered with gold and riches
Wow.
and a whole bunch of ancient history that people were interpreting of like this crazy king and his massive empire and all the people that loved him.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, like the rest of the world became obsessed with Egyptian folklore because it was this place you could go to and potentially uncover an ancient civilization.
Yeah.
And then your name goes in history.
True.
So it became associated with adventure.
Like the people who were looking for Troy in our Troy episode about like, is Troy even real? Where is it?
So yeah, it became associated with that. A lot of movies and stuff were made, which is where we got the original The Mummy.
Black and white.
Yeah, the black and white movie.
Back with the classic Universal horror.
But also there were some things.
Cleopatra came out around
So it varies, but typically whenever you were being buried, you're like, hey, don't touch my stuff. Because it was believed your body was still yours. You were still in that body, just sort of off in another world. And like they had little statues.
Mm-hmm.
And those little statues meant to symbolize the soldiers and servants that would be taking care of you in the afterlife.
Ah.
So they would often put a thing like, don't rob this tomb, or I, with all my new god powers, will come back and kill you.
Fair enough. I do that too.
And so it was basically like some vague warning of like, don't touch this, or you'll have wrath brought upon you. Or...
It's like a lot of folklore. Don't be a dick, or there'll be a curse. Like, don't be a cannibal, or you'll turn into a Wendigo.
But there was also kind of a real life correlation with that, and the fact that a dead body, bacteria would grow on it, deadly bacteria.
And they weren't washing their hands with soap back then.
So yeah, like because you weren't washing your hands, you had deadly bacteria and stuff. You would go in, take some stuff like ha ha ha, and probably mess around with the emperor you didn't like or something. Mm-hmm. Just like, I don't know, like if you were an idiot or you were breathing that stuff in, you came out and you started dying.
Yeah.
Because you had just breathed in a hot box of deadly bacteria. And
have you seen, there's video footage of people who find like tombs, and sometimes of like a night, sometimes it's fair. When they open it up, it's like a soup with a skeleton in it, and the smell is horrendous. And people to this day with modern vaccines, they get sick.
Yeah, like
it's like once you think about you're opening like a fermented human soup.
Also,
why you don't want to go in there.
Also, you have to think about the fact that
an inbred human soup.
That's true.
Gross.
But you have to think about the fact that they had viruses and stuff they fought off, like sicknesses. but then they died, get buried, and those viruses change or they die out and new ones evolve. And so what we have as are immune to is entirely different
Yeah,
strain
strains.
of
Yeah.
that. So you could be pulling up something your body has no defenses for.
Yeah.
So there was kind
Or a
of
super like a super evil version of it because it's just been a fermented, disgusting inbred soup god. Yuck.
yeah. So
Don't mess
it's
with mummies. Just like the curse isn't what you should be scared of.
Yeah.
It's bacteria and plagues. So I think this is a point where I'm supposed to ask you if you think a Nox on a Moon belongs in a museum, and you have to ask me about Imhotep.
yeah. This is the first time we've really
Double teamed,
Don't phrase it like that.
like Sean Bean and Goldeneye.
We just watched Goldeneye like yesterday.
So I'll just go and say I think Imhotep does belong in a museum, not only because the real guy worked on things that are still around or considered parts of the great historical world, culturally relevant from way back then, but also I don't know that many guys whose mythology garnered a cult that then transferred into a new era of religion and culture. That's really fascinating and cool.
Yeah, and that is such a like once again and that is like another thing. Imagine if you built a building or something like some dope like thing for someone and you weren't in power and you found it's like, oh, when you die, they consider you a god. And the culture that replaces yours and is considered one of the highest grossing like empires out there, they worshipped you.
Yeah. Which
Like-
brings us back to the timeline of our burger episode. Remember? Because Genghis Khan and the Greeks and all that.
Wow. So yeah,
History's all interconnected, and food is the true soul of the universe.
weirdly, yeah.
So, yeah. Does a Nox on the Moon belong in a museum? Yay or nay? Not really feeling it?
I mean, outside of being inbred and banging her brother, uncle, grandfather, I don't know a whole lot of what she did.
I'll tell you this. The character certainly has a place in my heart, but specifically the Stephen Sommers movie version. That was quite an awakening.
I don't know.
I don't know if I'd be mummified for her, but,
Well,
real love
Fair.
is being willing to have someone pour scarabs into your
didn't she
tomb.
betray him at Imhotep
Oh, yeah,
at
no,
the end?
she's
And
not
he's like sadly just being pulled into the underworld.
Yeah. No, he suffered for her, and then she wasn't right or die. She abandoned him, but then she got crushed by rocks. So,
Find a real ride or die girl, like the girl from the Tom Cruise The Mummy movie.
Are you talking about Sofia Boutella, or are you talking about the actual woman that Tom Cruise is supposed to be like?
No, Sophia Boutella.
Okay, yeah.
Obviously, that way more ride or die. Her.
Yeah. No, I mean, no, she was totally willing to share ruling the world with Tom Cruise. And honestly, I've seen his movies. I would share the world with him too.
Yeah, some guy she just met and she's offering immortality and ruling the world. You know, that's a girl.
She moves a little fast.
Yeah, but you know what?
She has life goals.
Yeah, and she has long-term commitments right there.
So, you're right. Maybe I'll look and see if there's any historical precedents for what her character is based on, so we can just kind of hit all the mummies. And then we could do the terracotta soldiers, which is crazy. And
or the Nika riots I want to do. Which
there weren't any mummies there. I have tons of other topics that aren't mummy adjacent. I'm just saying. So, this has been It Belongs in a Museum, and 50% of what we talked about does belong in a museum, apparently.